Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Seminar. Hope you are doing great. So I came across this video where this man was talking about how when white people talk about solidarity, that it's never for a good reason, that it's all for wrong reason. And it's true. That is absolutely true. They never talk about solidarity when it will not benefit them. Just like the way they came up with Pe0ple Revolution. And Pe0ple Revolution was because they are already feeling how bad the administration has treated them and all that. They thought it was going to be something that will affect my people. Because if we were affecting only my people, they wouldn't have ever come out to tell you that there is need for Pe0ple Revolution. Quote me anywhere. And I am going to ask, why is it that they always want to be oppressed? They act that they are oppressed, and who is oppressing them? I don't know. I don't know how they wake up and think that my people can be their oppressor when black people or even other people of color do not have the the power. They could be prejudiced or anything, but they do not have any power to oppress white people. And then the other one was talking about, they was talking about HBCUs. The black people have it. Did you know the reason why that HBCU? How did it start? Because it's also part of white history. Did you ever ask yourself how did it start? Of course you don't know, but you want to be so oppressed that black people have HBCU. Stay glued. Let's get into this video.
I'll go read the whole comment for context. The question is, what is my experience or understanding with regards to solidarity within whiteness? And I think a lot of white people bond within the idea of self-victimization and the collective agreement under whiteness of violence towards anyone that doesn't look like us. So if there's a group of only white people, and a subject comes up where it's like, oh, I had this, black person the other day say they don't like me. The conversation is going to quickly turn into because I'm white. I mean, no, it's probably because you're a fucking shitty ass person. But even if it was because you're white, that will pop up other discussions amongst white people. Like, oh yeah, I remember this time, blah, blah, blah. And then it just compounds to how, maybe we're hated because of our skin color, or, it'll just devolve into different crazy ass conversations, which ultimately is us bonding over the fact of being a victim, which we aren't. We're not oppressed, but a lot of white people feel that if we get any pushback, or if anyone names white supremacy or bigotry or racism, then all of a sudden people can't take a joke, or everyone's too sensitive, or it's not that deep, or why are you reacting like that towards me? Why are you so angry? Again, just reinforcing the victimization. The other time that white people come together, and we see this all throughout centuries of this country, is when there is this collective understanding that violence must maintain the culture of white Christian nationalism. Now that in some small spaces that will be said out loud, but we see it play out whenever a black man, woman, or child is murdered by the cops. Again, January 6th, when the Nazis are marching in the streets and white people are just like, oh, it's just freedom of speech. This constant justification of the violence that any white people carry out. Or the lone wolf bullshit, or just mental health stuff, or they were bullied when these little white boys go in and shoot up schools, or white men go run their trucks into churches and open fire on the fucking congregation. There's always an excuse. There's always a justification. And so there's a shared connection of an undercurrent of hatred and violence towards everyone else. Again, it won't be said out loud. It will definitely in some spaces, but in other ones, it'll show up differently in the way that a lot of white people will play into having discussions about stereotypes of different communities outside of our own, which again just further devalues, dehumanizes anybody that isn't white. And it's proven when you see the white collective come together to justify any, even physical violence, right? Because a lot of white people think violence only equates to physical acts of violence. But doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter who it is. If they're outside of the collective whiteness, white people will join forces and dehumanize the person that was murdered that is not white on a mass level, on a mass scale. I can't even remember her name, but that one white woman that was calling that young black child slurs raised, what, a fucking $1 million? It's that solidarity of, yes, I am the victim for being held accountable. And if we can all agree on that as white people, we will never be wrong in the white collective consciousness. But even when you see, white people that give a fuck right now try to bond with other white people over, basic humanity, half the population of white people don't give a fuck. There's no community. There's no consistent goal for coming together as white people outside of to carry out violence. Because even those on again, the white people that do care right now of what's going on, even when they get corrected, I already saw it today. It's an automatic reactionary, I've experienced reverse racism as a Democrat, white or leftist, whatever. Or again, like I've said the past week, that white people on the left will react like, well, I did my best. And apparently that's not good enough, which then other white people will chime in and be like, yeah, I felt the same way. They just don't appreciate, they being whoever outside of whiteness, don't appreciate what we're trying to do. And so the cycle continues. It doesn't matter what side of the political spectrum white people land on. I don't know. Hopefully there was some answers in there. Sorry, I get long. This is another great question. The first thing that comes to mind for me is militias, right? I think there's a lot of white people that join militias in solidarity with each other because they are fearful of retaliation. And the reason I say white militias right now, specifically, is because they're nowhere to be found, right? They sit here and make their entire personality the Second Amendment, standing against a tyrannical government, don't tread on me bullshit, all their Confederate flag bullshit. And they don't do anything. They don't do anything. In fact, they follow what the National Guard or any other three-letter agencies, from the government, whatever they are told to do, they'll do that. And I remember this in Louisville in 2020. I talked about this quite a bit. But the militias did show up, but they were there to protect the cops and aim their guns at us that were in the street fighting for justice for Breonna Taylor. It's this, like I was talking about, constant self-victimization, this preparation to carry out violence in case their fears or their self-victimization gets validated. And so I do think that a lot of white people gather together to, again, fuel the collective victimization of whiteness so they can all feel validated again in carrying out that violence. Same shit with January 6th. Just, they all victimize themselves, organized, carry out violence against everybody because they feel like the retaliation came from the other side because Joe Biden won the election. So they're all primed and ready at all times to carry out violence if it benefits whiteness. I think that a lot of white people wouldn't explicitly say they stand in solidarity regards to fear of retaliation. But I do think that's a large undercurrent regarding the way a lot of white people meet up and operate. And I think it's, again, because subconsciously white people know how we have treated anyone that isn't white for centuries. And I think there's a fear that that shit might come back on us as a collective. Which, if it did, it would just be justice. But other communities don't operate under whiteness, under white supremacy. And so the first response for groups outside of whiteness is not violence, but that's our default setting anytime that collectively white people feel like their feelings are hurt, especially white.
You know how there's the HBCUs, which stands for the historically black college universities? If we were to say there's an HWCU and say it's historically white college university, would we be called racists? That's a yes.
Girl, shut the fuck up. You thought you ate that? Bitch,
There's a fundamental lack of knowledge and understanding of the history of the country we live in by the majority of the people in this country who don't look like me. To come online and say, if white people had white-only schools, that they will be racist. Well, here's a brief history as to why HBCUs exist. It wasn't until 1954 with Brown versus Board of Education that schools were legally desegregated, meaning prior to that, black people were not allowed to go to the better schools with white people. We weren't allowed to go to white hospitals. We weren't allowed to use white facilities. Therefore, we had to build our own. This is a very popular picture of a little girl named Ruby Bridges, who's still alive today and only in her 60s, where the National Guard had to escort her to school because she was the first black girl to desegregate a school, and they had to protect her from white adults from hurting her. There were riots, there were protests. So to answer your question, revert to this image, cut to every time we did build our own, you burned it, you destroyed it, you eminent domained it, you built highways through it, or you flooded it. Seneca Village, Lake Lanier, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Rosewood, just to name a few. I could never understand how people can come online and make statements like this with their chest without picking up the phone. We have the world encyclopedia in our palm just to Google, why do HBCUs exist? And as a white person, not to understand that PWIs are the standard in America and 90% of the colleges are white institutions still to today. Those white institutions segregated and discriminated against us. HBCUs and black people have never discriminated against anyone else. To be white in this country means to be discriminatory. And that's just a status quo for what it means to be black. I was having this conversation this weekend with my cousin about how much energy it takes to be racist. And he said, well, you know, a lot of people are just misinformed, and that ignorance is weaponized by the right in order to make them think that people are taking their jobs they would never do, that black people are getting ahead because of D&I, which is why D&I existed, because we were actually systematically, legally discriminated upon. When I thought about that and I saw this video, I'm like, oh, this is a simple education thing. This country doesn't teach the real history of this country, because 90% of white people, let's just say I'm going to go high on that figure, majority of white people in this country don't have any exposure to black people. Unless you live on the coast or you're in a major city, you don't really have exposure to anyone else but your rural white town. So why would you know anything about HBCUs? Why would you know anything about why D&I or affirmative action exists? Why would you believe anything outside the realm of what you live in? So I implore you, sir, pick up a book, learn the history of the country we live in, and understand why black institutions had to be built, because we were not allowed to be American, the very thing that we are.
This is all I got from this video. I am going to tell you something. Like they already said, I have never seen people that want to be oppressed more than black people, more than white people, than any other people. You know, the same people, they want to be oppressed so bad. The same people that will come out, you know, when you talk about racism, they will immediately, without even wanting to know what, they will tell you reverse racism. If you talk about slavery, they will tell you, yes, their ancestors were also slaves. Right? Why do you want to be a victim so bad? Sometimes I feel like they are gaslighting, but actually they are gaslighting. You are not oppressed. Nobody has ever tried oppressing you. You guys have been the ones oppressing people. Okay. Now this one is talking about HB. Like some of them are in United States, but they do not know their own history. That is how bad it is. They want to get into every conversation, but they know nothing about that conversation. And then it is only when that it is going to benefit them that you see them want to talk about solidarity. And let me tell you something. Anytime you see a white person talk about solidarity, it is all for a wrong reason. It is never for a correct reason. Quote me anywhere. It is never for a correct reason. They have something they want to siphon from you. You know, and like the ADV talked about DEI and all that, and how they feel like, they feel like they are taking our jobs, they are taking our this, they are taking our that. Some of these things are the jobs they can't even do, right? And okay, the jobs, why are they not in the farms? Why are they not in the farms? Because last I checked, the farmers are looking for people to work in the farm. Remove diversity, equity, and inclusion, all that, not knowing that they are even the one that benefit more than any other person. They feel like anything that includes Black people, it gets them so scared, because they feel like you are going to be better than them, richer than them, and all that. That's why they are so scared of Black wealth and all that. Black excellency scares them more than any other thing. And if you notice, they also decided to put asunder between Black, because they feel like we don't want. Oh, I don't know how to explain this, but one of the problems my people are going through are these people. Yeah. I will draw the curtain here. Bye for now.